If you've been culling, aka narrowing down your wedding photos all in one go, you're probably wasting hours of your life on every single wedding edit.
Not only will a 2-round cull make your life easier and save you time, but it'll feel so much less overwhelming than trying to cull through thousands of images all at once.
So before we walk you guys through what that looks like, we want to introduce ourselves.
I'm Hunter.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're Hunter and Sarah Photography, a husband and wife professional wedding photography team.
We're also educators, and our goal is to help photographers build strong foundations in both their businesses and their personal lives so that they can run profitable and sustainable photography businesses.
Today, we're continuing our post-production video series with our methods of narrowing down or culling a huge gallery of wedding or engagement session photos into a more curated selection of images that you are just thrilled to edit and share with your clients. And we're going to show you how we do it quickly and efficiently.
However, a good chunk of this video will not make any sense if you didn't see our last video about importing into Lightroom and keyword sorting. So if you missed last week's video, be sure to check that out first.
Now, assuming you've done both of these things, now you're ready for the real post-production work to begin with the cull. And if you're not familiar with that word, culling, it really just means taking a large selection of something and narrowing it down into a better, smaller version.
Now, if you've ever culled a wedding before, you know that it can be a long and sometimes tedious process, especially if you're a bit shutter happy like a lot of newer photographers are.
But if you saw our video last week, you know that we introduced you to our post-production secret of keyword sorting. And we call it a secret just because most of the other photographers we know don't do that. And the second round cull is kind of the same.
Yeah, so this week, we're sharing another secret, which is our 2-round cull. And we've found that this saves us a lot of time in the long run, even if it sounds like a bit of extra work at first.
So we're going to go into more detail, obviously. That's what this whole video is about. But the basic premise is just that during the first round cull, you're going to look through the entire wedding day and just separate the definitely not photos, the blurries, the blanks, that kind of thing, from the maybes.
Yeah. Then during the second round, you separate those maybe images from the absolutely yes images that you will actually edit and deliver.
So why do a cull in 2 stages? Why not just choose the best photos on the first time through? Well, over the years, we found that the 2-round cull combined with our keyword sorting method of handling post-production is really the most effective and efficient way to sort that huge number of images into a more manageable selection.
Yeah, the first round is a bit mindless. It's simple, it's easy, busy work, so you can really crush through it as quickly as possible. The second round cull, on the other hand, is concentrated, specialized work that takes intentionality and involves decision making that will affect your final product and therefore your client's experience as well as your overall brand. Doing the 2 rounds separately instead of trying to do it all in one go will help you do both tasks much more quickly and do them both better.
So just as an example, let's say Sarah and I went out with one of our assistants and we shot, I don't know, about 5,000 images on a wedding day. We might spend 3 hours on the first round cull, going through the whole wedding and taking 5,000 down to like 1,500. And then we might spend another 2 hours just on taking that 1,500 down to the final 1,000 or so images that we'll actually edit and deliver to our couples. But that 3 hours of busy work and 2 hours of concentrated work sounds better than what would inevitably become 6 or even 8 hours of concentrated busy work when you're trying to both sort through the blurs and the blinkers and the bad photos while also selecting and curating your very best images. Honestly, your brain will thank you, and so will your clients, because you're going to deliver them a better gallery.
Yeah, and likewise with an engagement session, we might spend an hour taking 800 photos down to 250 in the first round cull, and then take another hour taking those 250 images down to the 150 for the second round cull that we will actually edit and deliver.
So let's get into the specifics of how this all works. So you begin the first round cull by just opening up one of those keywords that you created after watching our last video, and you just start with one keyword at a time.
By the way, we recommend culling the wedding in whatever order you consider to be the least fun to the most fun. You know, since we are always so excited to look through our clients' first look and golden hour images, we actually save those for last as a bit of an incentive to get through the, less exciting keywords. We usually start with dancing photos, the reception milestones like toasts and speeches, and the ceremony, since those are usually larger collections of images and they're actually less photographically creative for us. But for you, the order may be totally different. If you love culling and editing dancing photos, then you need to save those for last.
So no matter what order you choose, once you select a keyword category to start with, break that category up even further by selecting just one of the lenses you shoot with. So you're going to go through each category and each lens one photo at a time and assign some metric to all the images you want to pass through as those maybes. So for us, that's a 1 star. For example, we're going to start with dancing photos and then cull through all the dancing photos taken with our 35mm lens one by one. Then we'll cull through all the dancing photos taken with our 50mm lens one by one until we've culled through all of our lenses just like that.
Sorting by keyword and by lens further kind of breaks down the cull into more manageable chunks and also ensures that during the first round cull, we're comparing apples to apples. We're only going to be comparing the 35mm dancing photos to other 35mm dancing photos and then on to the next lens until we finish that keyword. Only once we've finished all of the lenses for a keyword do we then move on to the first lens for the next keyword and, on and on until you finish the entire wedding.
So when it comes to the first round cull, the operative word is really speed. Your goal should just be to get through it as quickly as possible, making split-second gut decisions all along. So if you have to really stop and think about it, you should probably just set it to 1 star and move on.
After all, those 1-star images are your maybe images. Your definitely not images are the images that are blurry, where a subject is blinking, images that are exact duplicates of something that you've already 1-starred, or images that are just kind of meh. All of these kinds of shots should just be skipped over and left as 0 star.
So for Sarah and I, in our experience, it's usually about 30% of images that we take on a wedding day will pass through the first round cull, but that's probably going to change depending on your shooting style and even what part of the day you're capturing, right? We know that because our portraits are so well, we are so intentional as we shoot portraits that it's a much higher percentage we pass through, whereas dancing photos, because they're so action-based, it's like 1 out of every 10 dancing photos might make it through.
Yeah, and as a quick aside, if you are not shooting a movement-based photo like the wedding party actively walking down the aisle or your couple doing their first dance, there's no reason that you should be ever holding down your shutter. If your couple is standing still and looking at the camera, 1 click and then, a backup in case someone blinked is plenty. One of our biggest pet peeves, I know it's my biggest pet peeve, is when one of our apprentices assists us on a wedding day and takes 8 identical shots of people who are just standing absolutely still and not moving.
Or even, we've had someone who came with us and shot 10 or 12 photos of a non-moving stationary object.
A stationary dress. You don't need 30 identical photos of a stationary object. You're just filling up your memory card, slowing down your computer, and wasting your own time in post. That's it. Rant over. Okay. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Wow. Okay, great. Anyway, once you get good at culling, the first round cull, you should be able to knock out at least 1,000 images an hour. Like I mentioned earlier, 3 hours for a 5,000 image wedding is not unrealistic for us because we've been doing this for so long.
Yeah. So now that you've separated the definitely nots from the maybes, category by category and lens by lens, it's time to step things up and take them 1 step further. For the second round cull, we still recommend going keyword by keyword to break the cull up into those manageable sections. However, you don't want to separate by lens for the second round cull.
So the whole point of the second round cull is rather than shifting through misfires and people blinking, you're selecting the very best images from among your maybes of every lens. So, and of course you're going to assign them some sort of marker, like for Sarah and I, we do 2 star. So like Sarah mentioned, you're purposefully comparing apples to oranges by comparing all the lenses at once so that only your very best images pass through, not just the best images from each lens.
For example, while I do the second round cull for the sunset photos, we're going to compare the portraits that I took with my 50mm versus portraits that Hunter took with his 85 or his 35mm. We'll deliver, many images for all 3 of those lenses, but not every usable image from all of those lenses. We only want to deliver the very best to our couples, and trust us, while they don't want duplicates or misfires, they also don't want 4 copies of essentially the same image.
So this is why we separate the cull into 2 rounds, right? The intentionality and thoughtfulness of the second round is really different from the first round, which is just get through it as quickly as possible and get rid of the bad photos. So because they're so different, your brain will thank you and you'll do better if you actually separate them, because you're just not trying to think of so many things at once. So keep in mind, everything that you mark as 2-star, everything that passes through that second round cull, you're gonna have to edit all of that and then deliver it to your clients. So if you kind of keep that in the back of your head, it might help you be a little bit more selective as you go through the second round cull, because you only want the very best of your images to be delivered to your clients.
Yeah. And think about it like this. If culling a wedding were like mining for gold, the first round cull would be panning out in the riverbed. It doesn't take a specialist to tell the difference between a nugget of metal, something shiny, and a piece of brown dirt. It just takes someone who knows what to look for. However, the second round cull would be like an experienced gold miner examining the nuggets with a magnifying glass in order to separate the best and purest gold from just the shiny rocks. This takes a specialized hand and lots of concentration.
So following that same analogy, you wouldn't want the experienced gold miner with a magnifying glass and doing geological tests on the metal on every single rock in the stream, right? There has to be some sort of process where you narrow things down before you get to that point. But at the same time, you also wouldn't want to just pan through, get rid of the dirt, get rid of all the bad images, and then just send everything else to your couples, right? That's how you end up with a gallery that's full of good, but also not okay images. Sarah and I, and maybe this is personal preference, but we would rather deliver a gallery of, 750 photos that we feel like every single shot in the wedding is just out of the park. We would rather do that than deliver a gallery that's twice that size, where it's 50% incredible images and 50% images that are just okay. And that's especially true for things like portraits and getting ready and details and, the non-dancing part. Sometimes with dancing, you just deliver tons of fun photos. But
So here are just a few final tips for culling, large galleries like weddings, which can also apply for culling portrait sessions.
So keep in mind, with the entire post-production process, but especially culling, since it can be such a big chunk of it, efficiency is so important. If you waste just 2 hours per wedding and you shot 20 weddings in a year, you would end up wasting an entire week just on inefficiency. And carry that even further, if you wasted 4 hours per wedding, which trust me is not as hard as it sounds, and you shot 40 weddings in a year like Sarah and I did last year, that adds up to an entire month of time just lost to inefficiency, right? So if you think about what you could do for your business or for your family time or for your mental health, if someone just handed you a free week or a free month, you're going to start to frame why efficiency is so important. And even if you only have 2 or 3 weddings booked this year, if you build the efficient systems now, when you do get busy, you're going to get busy relatively easily, as opposed to the last thing you want to do is wait until you have 20 weddings booked to try to figure out how to get efficient.
Yeah, this is why the environment you work in is just as crucial as the systems that you use. Because the first round call is relatively mindless, we'll often listen to music, a podcast, or an audiobook while we're doing that first round call.
Bonus points if the audiobook or podcast is about business or photography.
Yes, but during the second round call, we recommend turning off any distractions, say for maybe some instrumental music that will help you concentrate.
We know that listening to something that's stimulating or even just entertaining is actually going to help you in the long run stay focused on what you're doing. Because if you're just sitting there trying to do a first round call of 5,000 photos in silence, eventually you're going to take a break and you're going to waste 45 minutes or an hour scrolling through social media, right?
So, however, throughout the entire process, like
blogging, social media, culling, editing, everything,
watching anything is 100% off limits. TV, YouTube, Netflix, whatever it is. If your eyes are darting from your laptop screen to a TV, even just once every few seconds, those breaks in concentration will add up quickly and turn, a 5-hour call into a full 8-hour day. You'd be better off just knocking out that call in 5 hours and then doing something you enjoy, whether it's watching TV, going for a walk, hanging out with friends, with those hours that you saved in the meantime.
And another way to make this process more efficient is if you work on a team like Sarah and I do. So what we will do is not only separate the first and second round, but we'll actually separate it among Sarah and I. So I'll do the first and she'll do the second, or vice versa. And that not only just breaks up the work and shares the load, but it also means that 2 sets of eyes and 2 perspectives have been on the gallery, which in the end is probably going to make for a better product.
Yeah. Likewise, if you have an assistant or if you're beginning to outsource some of your post-production work, because a first round call can be more easily taught than the second, the more experienced photographer, you, should do the second round call. Leave the first round call to them and keep the skilled, brand conscious second round call for yourself.
So to be clear, that was not permission to start outsourcing your post-production right away, right? You should be years into your photography business and have absolutely nailed your editing style. Be producing super consistent work day in and day out, have a large volume of weddings before you even think about starting to outsource any of your post-production. Especially early on in your business, you learn so much by culling and editing your own work, because it's basically like doing an intense review of your own photography immediately after every single wedding, and you will learn so much by seeing your own mistakes and watching your work get better. So definitely, it was years before we started to outsource any of our post-production, and we would definitely recommend the same.
But that's it for this week.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. Our hope is that this video has really helped you as you create your own post-production workflow and helped you to think about whether or not a 2-round cull is going to be right for you.
Yeah, if you want more helpful, free content for photographers, as well as a community of people who are also building their photography businesses, we would encourage you to join our Facebook community, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz, with Hunter and Sarah.
And so next week, we're going to be moving on to how we work social media and blogging into our workflow. So don't want to miss it. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff so you don't miss any of the content that we post.
And if you found this video helpful, if you have questions, or if you'd like to add anything you think we missed, feel free to comment below.
And finally, if you want to read the more detailed, in-depth dive into our culling process, you can do so with the written version on our Hunter and Sarah Photography blog. The link to all of this is in the description.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
See you next week.